So, how many mayoral candidates for the 2025 New York City election can you name?
Only two. Everyone's hating on Cuomo. So I should know it because he's also ethnic. His name's like Zoran.
I can't recall them at the moment.
I don't know. I know someone, but I don't know their name. I think it was a female.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just hoping they're all better than Eric Adams.
And how old are you?
18.
You're 18. Do you know that the mayoral campaign is actually starting this year?
Really?
Yes. Do you know the name of our mayor right now?
No.
Do you know what's happening later this June?
My graduation.
Hello, my name is Jojo Fofana.
And mine is Roberto Bailey.
And welcome to PS Weekly and election season. Right now, there are a dozen major candidates for mayor of New York City, with policies ranging from increasing the free fare buses to universal after school.
As of right now, Andrew Cuomo is leading the polls with Zoran Mamdani a close second, but things change fast these days. These candidates' policies could have a really big impact on us and young people across New York City.
Well, Mayor Adams laying out budget cuts across every city agency, from libraries to schools and even the NYPD. Food fight is brewing at New York City public schools.
That's right. Both kids and parents expressing frustration after several popular items were removed from the lunch menu due to budget cuts.
Still, young people have historically not shown up at the polls. Only 18% of people ages 18 to 29 voted in the last primary. There's a big lack of engagement.
18% is honestly really scary. To think that over 80% of young people aren't making their voices heard and don't have a say in their own future, their own city, it's hard to fathom.
All right, so kids aren't voting. Or more accurately, they're not paying attention to it. But civic engagement has never been my strong suit either. I mean, AP government is really notorious for being a lead culprit in senioritis, so can you really blame them? I'd also like to add that many seniors are usually 17, so it's not like they can vote anyway. Roberto, you're 17. Do you feel like you need to vote?
I definitely do, but admittedly, I never registered to vote, even though in New York it's possible to register after you turn 16, and then you can vote when you turn 18. But I never really learned what the process of voting looks like. I'll be around 20 or 21 when the presidential election rolls around, so hopefully I'll learn by then.
Okay, so I have a confession to make.
Go on.
I also didn't know any of these candidates before we started reporting on them.
Me neither. I mean, I knew the big ones, Cuomo, Mamdani, Adams, the current Adams, not Adrian.
I didn't even know Eric Adams was running for re-election this year.
Do you think it would be any different if you were taught civics? In fact, has your school even offered civics classes?
Yes and no. Of course, I know all about the three branches, but that's on a federal level. When it comes to, my local election, I know next to nothing.
I definitely understand that. Beyond history classes, I didn't really have a lot of civics education at my school either. In general, voting and being involved in politics just weren't super emphasized.
So in order to help us, and you, our listeners, learn more about these candidates, our friends at Chalkbeat reached out to each of them to answer a list of questions and send us a 1-minute video. Actually, I'll let Amy Zimmer, Bureau Chief of Chalkbeat New York, explain.
We sent out these 7 questions, plus the ask for the candidates to record a 60-second video for PS Weekly. So the questions were for Chalkbeat, for print, and then the video for PS Weekly to incorporate on this podcast. We sent this out March 25th, and we gave them a deadline of a few weeks, knowing that it was going to take time. And here we are in June, and how many candidates responded? 5.
Right, so we only got 5 responses, which was a little disappointing. But hey, we'll take it. So Jojo and I decided to just play the 5 candidates' videos and record our live, unfiltered, and thoroughly unresearched reactions. You're welcome. Okay, so the first video we have to listen to is
who's
Brad
this
Lander.
guy?
This is Brad Lander.
This is Brad Lander.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, NYC students. I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander. That's our city's chief financial officer. And I'm running for mayor.
Did you know our city has a $116 billion budget, and $34 billion of that is for our schools? Unfortunately, that budget is under threat from Donald Trump, and we don't have a mayor who will stand up and fight for it. When I'm mayor, I will. I'm running for mayor because I want a New York City where every family has a home they can afford to rent or buy, where we don't have homeless people sleeping on our streets and subways, and where every school is a great one. Both my kids, Marek and Rosa, went to New York City public schools from pre-K to 12th grade. My mom was a public elementary school guidance counselor, so I know we need them in every school. The pandemic and these friggin' phones have wreaked havoc with our mental health, all of us, and especially in our schools. We've got to do better by you.
Got to ban our phones.
So here's my big idea.
Do you have like a phone ban in your
They're
school?
banning phones next year. It's state law, actually.
I think it's stupid.
I mean, I think that he's kind of talking at us, but I'm not getting any clear policy positions. He's just saying all the things he would do and that he'll keep our budget.
You know, he's giving like principal core right now. Honestly, I mean, he's gonna tell us about his big idea.
Let's hear his big idea.
All right, let's rate it at 1 out of 10.
Instead of measuring schools only by test scores, we've got to focus on your well-being and your tools for the future. That means more arts and sports and extracurriculars. It means getting out and learning from the city. It means financial literacy and real life skills, more internships and job opportunities in college and career. Here's a secret I'm happy to tell you. While reading and math are important, most of life, thankfully, is not reading and math tests. Your schools should show you lots of ways to thrive. New York City schools should help every student find what they're passionate about. If that sounds good to you, and if you're 18, come out and vote for me on June 24th.
Yeah.
I mean, his idea is like...
I like the philosophy behind it.
We should be holistic. Like, we shouldn't just focus on test scores. But again, like, is he going to allocate more funding towards, like, extracurricular programs in schools? Like, what is he going to do? Where is this money going to go? Like, I think it would be great to have more arts programs, for example. But I guess I wish he would say more about how he's going to guarantee that that happens.
Most definitely. And I don't know. I feel like it's too general. But overall, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
I'm giving it a 5.
A 5.
A 5.
Jeez, you are brutal.
50%. I wish there was more specifics. I'm not gonna give you I don't know. All right. So next we have Michael Blake.
I'm gonna cut in here for a second and just say that originally candidate Michael Blake didn't actually respond, but the Chalkbeat team was actually at an event where he was speaking and they chased him down. So yeah, the audio isn't great. Sorry.
What's going on, everybody? Michael Blake, candidate for mayor. Let me talk to the young people because I'm that kid that grew up at PS 79, 118 D with Clinton, so I know what it's like from Bronx, New York. My top priority for you is that you will be a part of what we are building. And that's why I say we have to have civics, financial literacy, and mental health for every student before you graduate from high school. Because then you're able to be a great global citizen, you understand the language of money, you're able to understand the power of mind. And the way we can make this all happen is actually collaborating with you to do it creatively, because it's different in all 5 boroughs. So if you want to learn more about our collective vision of how we have you at the table and how we empower you, the incredible, brilliant minds that you are, join us at BlakeForNYC.com. Plus, I'm the young Captain Swag, so you should rock us.
He didn't say anything.
Yeah, it was very word salad. I didn't get a lot of, again, like, we're not getting specifics
collaboration
here. It was, I like the ideas behind it. Like, I do think that we should have financial literacy programs in school. Like, I do think that we should be prioritizing people being responsible with their money. That's something that I think is left out from a lot of education. At the same time, what are you going to do? How are you going to make that happen? Do you want to move
on? Yeah, we're going to
Scott Stringer.
My top priority for New York City students is giving them what every child deserves, not just during the school day, but after it ends. That's why I'm proposing 2 changes: the extended school day hours and the NYC Tri-Share Child Care Program. We'll keep schools open later with free or low-cost after-school programs for all children. We need kids to explore STEM. We need tutoring. We need after-school. We need kids kids to do the very best they can with the resources we give them. That's my plan as the next mayor. This is how we meet the needs of young people, by supporting their families, closing opportunity gaps, and reimagining schools as hubs of care, learning, making a difference in the lives of parents, teachers, and our children. I have kids in the public schools. I have skin in the game. But the job of mayor is to help the kids we're never going to meet. Every child is special. We need a mayor who thinks this way. Someone who can break down the bureaucracy. Somebody who's not afraid to stand up and fight like hell for our children. This is what my mayoralty is going to be all about.
I didn't hate it.
I actually liked it. I didn't love that there were typos in the captions. But I like that it was specific. He talked about his programs, and I think the after-school thing is very, very true. Like, cheap or free after-school programs are something that can allow parents to work a full day.
They're a lifesaver.
They're lifesavers. I think that's a really great idea, and I'm glad that he isolated that as, like, kind of his main education, or one of his main education kind of goals, rather than talking very abstractly about all these different things. What about you?
You know what? Same boat as you. I think it's a green I think it's a green flag that, you know, he like centered on, you know, and he wasn't using buzzwords, you know, he was just like, hey, I think child affordability and like child like aftercare, especially after hours, is like really cool. I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10.
I'd give it an 8.
Okay.
All right, next is Whitney Tilson.
Despite spending roughly $40,000 per student, more than double the national average of $17,000, our school system is failing to properly educate far too many of our children, half of whom are struggling readers. I don't blame the children for this. I blame the system in which there's no accountability. Fortunately, there's an exception to this. 15% of our public school students are in schools that have high standards and real accountability. Charter schools. Every 5 years, every charter school is fully evaluated by its authorizer, and if it can't demonstrate that it's delivering for kids, it can be put on probation or even closed. This is as it should be. My question is, why aren't the other 85% of New York City public schools also evaluated and held accountable? Not necessarily closing schools, but how about replacing school leaders and teachers who aren't getting the job done? When I'm mayor, the school system's going to stop being run for the benefit of adults and start being run for the benefit of students, starting with evaluations for every school and accountability for every educator.
Wow. Well, come on, give it to me.
I think charter schools, I have complicated thoughts about them. Isolating the problem as just being that there's not accountability, like schools just don't care, they're not accountable, so they're not going to try. I think that's a massive oversimplification.
Zelnor Myrie.
What's up, guys? My name is Zelnor, and I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City. I would not be who I am today if not for public schools. I went to PS 161 in Crown Heights, and then I went to Brooklyn Tech for high school. Now, there were some challenges, and it was hard, but I didn't go to school during a once-in-a-century pandemic like a lot of y'all did. So big props to y'all. Now, both of my parents are from Costa Rica. They were working-class New Yorkers, came here for opportunity, but they couldn't afford extra tutoring or support for me, so I was really lucky. I had a middle school teacher that said, I'm gonna scrap the curriculum and I'm gonna help you prepare for the specialized high school exam. And I also had an affordable after-school program called the Crown Heights Youth Collective, a place where I could go and get help with my homework. But I also had fun too. I was the only boy on the step team. But it shouldn't be based on luck or your zip code. Every kid should have the same access to the resources they need so that they can excel in school and beyond. That's why when I'm mayor, I'm gonna institute free universal after school for everybody, from 3K all the way to grade 12. And for pre-K and 3K, I wanna extend from 2:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. because most New Yorkers do not get off at 2:30 p.m. There will be tutors to help you with your homework, but also activities so maybe you could learn how to step like I did, so we could all have fun. I also want to add 50,000 more slots to the Summer Youth Employment Program. That was my first job, and that's where I got a lot of the skills that I still use to this day. I want to provide that same opportunity for all of the young people in the city. I like that you gave a number, too. And speaking about young people, a lot of our politicians like to say that they care about what you think about. But I want to make that a reality, and I've started already on my campaign. I have a bunch of youth fellows that work directly for me right now, and they talk to me about what they want to see me do as the next mayor. So if you want to find out more, go to zellnor.nyc, ZELLNOR.NYC, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
That might be our first perfect score.
Yeah, I would not go that far.
Okay.
I did like it. I think that, again, it's like, we're going to have universal after school. How do you do that? Because that is expensive, difficult to implement. I agree with the premise. I love that he recognizes the needs of working class families. And I love that he talked to, like, this is something that's supposed to be targeted towards young people, these videos for Chalkbeat, and he talked to us. You know what I mean? I felt like I didn't feel pandered to, and I didn't feel infantilized. I felt like he was actually presenting policy positions that are youth focused. The adding 50,000 spots to the summer youth employment program, I really liked that because that is not that hard to do.
I agree. I think summer youth employment is like one of those like opportunities, especially if you're from like an underfunded high school, where like, let's say, you don't go to high school in Manhattan, and summer youth employment is like that big like equalizer.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like, it's lottery. So there's like a good chance that you could like not get in. Yeah. And, especially in this day and age where the college admissions process, where you kind of need to like solve cancer to like even like have a spot is so important. Yeah. So I really like that he like specifically added on that, and these after school programs, he gave names. And I think what sold it to me is that, he mentioned that he had youth fellows working with him. Yeah. Overall, I'm going to give it a 10 personally.
Okay, I'm giving it 8.5.
All right, 8.5?
8.5, because I still think that there can be more about implementation. Okay, so those were our unfiltered, unprocessed, and un-anythinged responses. Coming up after the break, we'll sit down with Chalkbeat New York's bureau chief Amy Zimmer and reporter Alex Zimmerman to take a little more nuanced look at the candidates, even the ones that didn't respond, including our current mayor Eric Adams, who is running as an independent.
We hope you enjoy listening to PS Weekly as much as we enjoy making it. I'm Amy Zimmer with Chalkbeat New York. We spend a lot of time planning each episode, setting up and conducting interviews, cutting the tape, writing scripts. It's a long process and totally worth it. But here's the thing. We don't have a bunch of money or millions of followers. So we're counting on you, loyal listener, to help us get the word out. Take a few seconds and send this link wherever you're listening to 3 friends, so they too can enjoy PS Weekly. Thanks for your support.
Welcome back to PS Weekly. My name is Roberto Bailey.
And I'm Jojo Fofana. We're talking about the upcoming mayoral election, and especially the primary that's coming up on June 24th. But early voting has already started, and that goes until June 22nd. So we sat down with Amy Zimmer and Alex Zimmerman from Chalkbeat New York a few days after the first televised debate in early June about the candidates, where they stand on education issues and why so many young people aren't tuning in.
Before the break, you heard our unfiltered reactions to 1-minute videos that 5 candidates sent. But there are actually 12 candidates. 10 primary candidates, 9 Democrats, 1 Republican, and 2 independents. Current Mayor Eric Adams is on that independent line, so he will not be on the ballot until the general election on November 4th.
Eric Adams' campaign said they declined to participate because they said he's not part of the primary, so they just said we're out. Okay, so then we're down to 11. And then we have sent so many emails to the folks who haven't responded. And, it's disappointing, right? Cuomo's campaign, they responded fairly quickly to us for the print part, for the 7 questions. They met the deadline and everything. I have emailed them several times about the video. Crickets. Like, they didn't even acknowledge the question. Which makes you think, like, is it that they don't have time, they're not organized, or they don't care? If you're going to run this gigantic city, you have to care about everyone and everything and manage a huge bureaucracy. Adrienne Adams, her team didn't respond at all for a very long time. And finally, we put out our first piece of our 7 questions and sent it to them. And then after we published, they sent us all the responses, but they still haven't responded to the video. Mom Donnie, his office, they kept him promising, oh, we're going to get you something. And then it was Albany legislative season. Oh, it's so busy, but we'll get you something. And then finally, they've been answering one question at a time right before the deadline. But again, like that kind of response by his campaign, it just makes you wonder how organized that campaign is and like what does that mean when you think about someone's managerial experience, you know, apart from the actual substance of his platform.
It also plays to his strength. That's what was kind of interesting to me, right? Like Mamdani is kind of well known for like having sharp videos that are engaging, and like he's very good at that, and like so you'd think it would play to a strength of his.
So Jessica Ramos, also we were having difficulties getting her response, but then I chased her at an event as well, and then they did finally respond to our questions, but they never sent the video, even though they said they would. And I will say, like, you know, in some ways, the people who responded and, you know, you're critiquing them, and the people who haven't responded get almost a pass because you can't respond. Who knows what they would say and how you would appreciate or not appreciate what their video would say. So in some ways, they're getting off easier, and that's not really fair because we gave them plenty of time to respond, and I really do wish that they had taken this more seriously.
One other, I guess 2 other things. One, I guess we haven't really talked about like Mamdani or Cuomo's education platforms like in a substantive way. Like Mamdani's main youth-focused agenda item is like universal childcare, so not like a K-12 education policy idea. During the debate, I thought it was really interesting that the main point Cuomo wanted to make about what he wants to do to improve the system is to hire more paraprofessionals, which are like classroom aides who often work with students with disabilities. It's interesting because there is a shortage of paraprofessionals, and that poses really significant problems for kids with disabilities. But it's also interesting because it's been a major priority of the teachers union.
You know, the tricky thing is, so for instance, again, going back to the videos, right? We asked the candidates to do a 60-second video. Some of them did longer. But the point is, to really be informed, you do have to do legwork, right? You do have to look at their campaign websites and their platforms because there's so much more than just a 60-second soundbite. And, you know, frankly, like you were talking to your friends at school and they said things like, I'm just focused on school. I'm focused on graduation. I'm focused on other things, right? And so a lot of people don't do that and don't have time to inform themselves. And I think that's really tricky, right?
You know, like recently I was talking to people about the election, and the biggest thing that came up, especially when we were doing like in the Bronx, the biggest thing that came up is that there's a era of being apolitical. I think it might be because we've like attached this idea of being like politically engaged into a luxury like reserved for the rich. Biggest reason I got was, hey, like I don't have time for this, man. I've got like stuff to do. I have stuff to do as well. I didn't really care about this until like 2 months ago when I started reporting on it. And you know, internally I've always thought to worry about this must be a luxury of the rich.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a luxury in many ways to be able to do the kind of like in-depth, I guess, research on candidates. So even if someone might align with maybe more these kind of more like far left values of candidates like Mamdani, they might end up voting for Cuomo basically based off the name. And we've seen that as something that's kind of emerged in polling. It's name recognition that's really important.
Take the debate. We got to the end, what are you going to do about NYC schools? And crickets. In my opinion, crickets. From what I remember from my notes, I didn't really hear much, especially from our top candidates. So
right now, pretty much Cuomo and Mamdani. I didn't hear much from them. Zelnor gave a stellar response as usual. Everyone else, it was just afterthoughts, it was ideas, it was principles, but it wasn't plans. Brad Lander, he actually, he had like a 10-step plan or somewhere, but he didn't really say it. He said it's on his website, which is cool, and I believe him. I haven't had the chance to check it out myself, and I believe him. I'm sure it's detailed, but he could have articulated that better. It wasn't really like a thought for them. And I know that whoever gets in office, I know that, it's not going to be a thought for them.
I thought it was also really interesting that the candidates did not seem prepared with like elevator pitches about their education policies, right? Like, it's fully reasonable to expect that you're going to get a question about managing the nation's largest school system. And so you really should have a pretty polished, like 30-second answer that's like clear and ticks off some of your like top objectives there. And like even candidates like Brad Lander, who really do have like their 10-point plan sitting on their website, like I did think it was interesting that he didn't quite have like a super polished response to that question. And yeah, I mean, we were talking about this after the debate, just like when we were chit-chatting, that like a bunch of the candidates spent more time talking about like which public schools they or their kids went to than actually like answering the question.
Yeah.
So they were like very eager to show their like public school bona fides, but not as prepared to sort of like talk about their ideas for the system.
And let's just be clear, about 30% of New York City's budget goes to the education department. So it's pretty huge.
Yeah, it's the largest city agency, larger than the police department and health department and other departments combined. Like, it's quite large.
So it's shocking how little attention it is getting during this mayoral race.
I think it's just not like a big ticket issue as much as it might have been in like prior races. I mean, like most of the coverage of the debate, as well as like a lot of the focus of the questions themselves, were on mainly like affordability and housing. But mainly just that New York has become so expensive. And I think that that's the issue that they care about most rather than education, because even the education initiatives all went back to like affordability. Like Zelnor Myrie, for example, his policy of like universal after school is about primarily like working families and giving people not having to pay for things like babysitting or after school programs.
But just one more thing about that, affordability and all of that, like poverty, that all intersects with schools quite a bit. So, if you can't eat, if you don't have a place to live, it affects education as well. It affects how you show up in school and whether you show up in school and so much more. So
yeah, and this didn't get that much airtime during the debate, but like one of the things Brad Lander did say he wanted to do was like make every school community school, which are sort of like when schools partner with social service providers to provide things like dental clinics and food pantries and other forms of outreach to families. And so that was sort of another, he didn't quite frame it that way, but one could sort of like think about that through an affordability lens too. One question I wanted to ask you guys about your perceptions of the debate was like, what were the issues they weren't talking about in terms of education that like you wish they were?
Teacher turnover, that was a big one. That was something that I like really wanted them to touch on because we have a really big problem. In my high school, like 4 to 5 new teachers leave every year. 2 of them like left this year in the middle of the year. We had an AP teacher who was doing AP music theory and also was the instrumental teacher. And like he left in the middle of the year. He was teaching an AP class, and if you were in that AP class, you either self-studied or had to drop it, which sucked if you were like really passionate about music theory. I was in that class and I had to drop it because music theory is actually surprisingly really hard. It's like really hard, actually. I know, what's his name again? Whitney had mentioned. Whitney he gave us like a solution, but it actually, in my opinion, I thought it would have made it a lot worse, which was he wanted to like crack down on and start punishing the teachers. He wanted to crack down on why these schools aren't. And I was like, oh, that's actually really bad because these teachers need help, and we need to start, talking about the workplace environment and giving more incentives and pay raises potentially and overtime pay. So that's something I would have liked. Roberto, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, this controversy over like the efficacy of charter schools because they've taken on such a big role in New York City. I mean, you see them everywhere. They're getting larger and larger. There's like KIPP, Success Academy. So I thought that was something more candidates would talk about. And then I was also surprised no one talked about like specialized schools, just because it's another kind of like controversial point, like whether they should even exist in the first place, whether the SHSAT is like effective, what it means for educational equity in the city. I was just surprised that it wasn't something that came up.
And I was always wondering, are we still incorporating DEI in our public educational? How are you going to deal with that with Trump cracking down on DEI? I would have loved them to go into more about how we're going to keep incorporating DEI into our public schools.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart observation. Like, school segregation, just as a topic more broadly, has really fallen out of the conversation. And, you know, obviously the specialized high schools are kind of the starkest example of that, but by no means the only example of that. You know, under Mayor de Blasio, he put forward a plan that was an effort to diversify the specialized high schools and faced enormous backlash, and that didn't end up coming to pass. And we see in a lot of the candidates' proposals for how they would deal with, you know, screen schools, which pick students based on, you know, their grades and prior academic performance, which are highly correlated with race and class. And like what's really interesting is like a lot of the candidates, even on the left, are proposing opening more screen schools and like sort of framing that as like creating opportunity for more students and not totally grappling with like some of the potentially segregating elements of that. And so I think it's just like a really good observation, but also like reflects a real turn that's happened since the last mayoral administration.
That was reporter Alex Zimmerman, along with Bureau Chief Amy Zimmer from Chalkbeat, New York.
A couple notes, actually. After our conversation, we did get 2 more responses from Jim Walden, who is running as an independent, and audio from Curtis Lewa, who is running in the Republican line. But it was after the deadline. You can find all candidates' video and those additional written responses Amy mentioned at the links in our show notes.
And by the way, there actually are resources out there for young people to get engaged in your local election. The first thing you have to do is register to vote. And in New York, you can do that to up to 10 days before the election. It's too late by now to vote in the primary on June 24th, but you can still register before the November 4th general election. So go to vote.org, click on the New York, and it will guide you through the process.
If you're already registered and want to vote in the primary but don't know who to vote for, here's something that's actually really great. Search for Meet Your Mayor 2025, and you'll find an interactive quiz from 2 nonprofit news organizations, The City and Gothamist, that will match you with the candidate who best represents your views. This is especially helpful with the ranked choice voting system here in New York City, which means you choose your top 5 candidates in order of preference.
And lastly, if you really want to get involved, check out whyvote.org. That's why vote with the letter Y. It's an organization that has tons of ways for young people to get actually civically engaged.
And with that, that's a wrap on Season 2 of PS Weekly. Producers for this episode were me, Roberto Bailey.
And me, Jojo Fofana. We're reporting help from Amy Zimmer and Alex Zimmerman at Chalkbeat.
Our executive producer for the show is Ave Carrillo, and executive editors are Amy Zimmer and Taylor McGraw.
Additional production and reporting support was provided by Mira Gordon, Sabrina Duquesne, and our friends at Chalkbeat. Our engagement editor is Carolina Hidalgo.
This episode was made using Hindenburg Pro, music is from Blue Dot Sessions, and the jingle you heard at the beginning of the episode was created by Erica Wong.
And special thanks to our mentor, Mark Pagan. Have a great summer, everyone. See you all in Season 3 of PS Weekly, the voice of the New York City school system.